Hey, what's up, guys? It's AJ from the Comeback Sports Podcast, and this is Season 4, Episode 6. So let me double check on that, actually. Yeah, it is Episode 6. Jam-packed filled episode as usual. I had to take a couple weeks off because I got sick with COVID, actually, and I got busy with work. So it's nice to be back. We're going to chat about the World Cup that's going on, college cross-country, a little bit of basketball, Big Ten football, and the college football playoff rankings came out this week. This is week 12 of the rankings, so we'll talk about that as well. Kind of just get into it. So the World Cup is going on, and it's being hosted in Qatar. If you remember a previous guest in the show, his name is Todd. He's all the way back in Season 1. He's actually in Qatar for the games, and I'm sure he's having a great time since he's a huge soccer guy. Lots of cool, interesting things going on with the World Cup. First thing that was kind of interesting was they banned beer from being sold in the stadium to the public, which I think is kind of dumb because corporate sponsors or, the people that pay for the huge tickets get to still have beer, but of course the little people can't. But I'm sure they're finding ways to still drink. But personally, for me, I wouldn't want to be caught breaking the rules in a country like Qatar. I feel like their laws are definitely way more strict compared to the U.S. laws. I don't want to be in prison for life for something as silly as sneaking a Coors Light into a football stadium. So there's that. Some recent games that were on. First one that comes to mind is England spanked Iran 6-2. The biggest upset of the week so far is Argentina. That's where Messi. That's who Messi represents. Was upsetted by Saudi Arabia. Someone described that upset as being like Alabama football against some small FBS school that no one knows about. And I could see that. In terms of U.S. soccer, because U.S. is in the World Cup, they lost to Wales. My coworkers were watching that the other day, and yeah, it sounds like it was just U.S. just couldn't close it down and get the deal done. So unfortunately, they lost to Wales. So hopefully they can continue to bounce back from that. Mexico tied with Poland today, and tomorrow Croatia will play Morocco. So interesting games coming up, and interesting games already happened so far. Personally, for me, I've talked about this with Andy when he was on the show, is I'm not in super favor of the World Cup because of kind of the controversial things going on with the whole setup. I recall last year there was news stories about workers building this brand new stadium for the big event, and many have died in the process for work-related injuries or dehydration and things like that. And it's Jesus, who is regulating this and looking out for these people? We shouldn't have to have people die just to watch the biggest soccer event in the world. At the end of the day, it's soccer, and people shouldn't die for it. So that's kind of my stance on the World Cup. I definitely understand kind of the excitement involved with it, but in terms of how it came about, it's not as exciting to me. But I still want to watch some games and enjoy it, though, especially Mexico, since I am Mexican, so I want to cheer for my fellow country. Let's kind of transition over to cross country. So I'm sure you're probably surprised that, they have college cross country on TV. Yeah, they do, and it's not very often. Usually colleges will have cross country races on ESPN for the biggest meets of the year. The smaller ones at the beginning of the year, those usually aren't televised on national TV just because no one really cares, and football season is pretty top of the line and more important around that time of the year. So they only show the championship races, being conference championship cross country for men and women, and the national championship. And that's what I watched this weekend. I watched the women's race. They run a 4K, which is a little over 3 miles. I think it's 3.5, closer to 4. And then I watched the men's 10K, which is roughly a little over 6 miles. I think it's 6.25 miles. I could be wrong, but long distance racing and some interesting things I've saw. So bear with me if you don't watch cross country and I'm naming a bunch of names you probably never heard of, but I'll make sure I break it down for you. So watching the women's race, this race also takes place in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I was kind of surprised to see that it was pretty chilly that night, or that day. It was the morning of, on Saturday, and I think the gun temperature, or the temperature it was when the starting gun went off, was like 30 degrees, maybe 33. There were some chilly runners on there, and being Oklahoma, I was surprised it was that chilly. So the women's race started first. Parker Valby from Florida had a dominant lead in the first half of the race, but all eyes were on Caitlin Toohey from North Carolina State. She has been on the national stage many times. She's only a sophomore, but she's had national attention since high school and is arguably one of the most decorated runners in high school history. She's a national championship 3 times. She has won Gatorade Female Cross Country Athlete of the Year 3 times. It's kind of like the MVP of cross country or track running when you're in high school. It's like you're the best of the best 3 years in a row for this sort of thing. So everyone is all eyes on her, and Parker Valby is no scrub. She got 26th place last year in the same race, but we were definitely waiting for something to happen later in the race. So like with Valby, she likes to challenge everybody, kind of like Steve Prefontaine back when he ran in Oregon when he was around. She wants people to try to challenge with her. While Toohey, she's more tactical, and that's why she didn't really go with her in the beginning along with the rest of the field. Kelsey Chanel was right behind Toohey. She is Toohey's teammate. And in the final K, it started to solidify as a great team position for North Carolina State, and followed by the New Mexico women's team. The only thing that was keeping New Mexico from being in first was their 5th runner. So those of you who don't know how scoring works, it's kind of like golf where the lowest score wins. And how you place is what your score is going to be. So if you're in first place, your team gets 1 point. So the lower your overall score is with your first 5 runners, the better your chance of winning the cross-country meet. And the 5th runner is huge in things like this when it's such a competitive race. And New Mexico's runner didn't close on that, and that's what kind of made it difficult for them to get that first place position. What's really cool about this race is that they have a very cool finish to it. There's a final 200, and it's downhill from there, and that's when you really release that kick to really catch up if you need to play catch up. And you can probably guess, Caitlin Toohey definitely closed and just finished it off and beat Parker Valby. She took the lead in the final 400, and she won the race in 19 minutes and 27 seconds. I'm sorry. I said 4K earlier. I meant to say 6K for women's cross country. Caitlin had a very good season. She won the Wisconsin Nutty Combine, Nutty Comb 6K cross country race. She won the ACC cross country conference championship. And in that same race, she set a new course record, which was 19 minutes and 8 seconds. So to translate that, that's a little over 5-minute miles for a woman. So very, very badass girl, if you ask me, in terms of how competitive she is. So as a result, North Carolina State wins the meet with 114 total points. It's the best finish in program history, and that makes them back-to-back champs because they won it last year as well. They interviewed Parker Valby, who got second. Sure, she led the entire race. She finished second overall. But when they interviewed, she was in very good spirits and was very happy to beat her previous position. And she should be, because as long as you're having fun out there and you're being the best version of yourself on the course, then that's a win right there. So I'm glad that she wasn't too hard on herself, that she didn't win the whole thing. So let me transition over to the men's race. NAU, North Arizona University, is back-to-back winners. They won in 2020 and 2021. But Stanford was favored to win this going into the meet. So the favorites going into winning the race as an individual were NAU's Nico Young, BYU's Casey Klinger, Oklahoma State's Alex Mayer, and Stanford's runner Charlie Hicks. The start of the race is very important in my opinion because you all start at the same time and then you're all stuck in a pack and there's just people everywhere. This is the part where you kind of look around to see where your teammates are at and where the top guys are at and kind of see how good a position you're in and what you need to be doing moving forward. So Nico and his teammate Drew Bosley and Charlie Hicks, they took the lead. It was just those three for a little bit of the race. Not a huge distance from the pack, but a very dominating start. Followed by that was Hicks' Stanford teammate Kai Robinson, who's right behind them in fourth place. Young and Hicks started to pull away from the pack in the final K. They started to kind of sped it up. Okay, now let's really get this race going. And right behind them, there was a separate pack of runners that included Casey Klinger and two Oklahoma State runners. That includes Alex Mayer and his teammate Isaiah Rodriguez. At the end of the race, it was a kick race just like in the other one. Charlie Hicks outkicks Nico Young for the title, and he sets a course record of 28 minutes and 43 seconds. This is a 10K race. And what's really interesting is, like, they were chatting about it in the coverage. He has his own YouTube channel, so it's kind of cool to see, like, a runner have, like, a social media influence on YouTube. So I'll have to check out his content because it sounds like he's pretty popular. And this was really awesome to see. So in the first time in the history of college cross country national title, that is, there was a tie for first between NAU and Oklahoma State. The tiebreaker is usually who is the best six runner, but they didn't go it by that. Instead, it's how the top five of each team did head to head. So NAU's number 1, number 2, and number 4 best runners beat Oklahoma State's. So that gave them the 3-2 tiebreaker edge. So to kind of simplify a little bit more, if you were to pair up the number 1 runner for both teams, this first, second, and fourth were better than the other team's runners. Therefore, that's 3 out of the 5. So that breaks the tie, which is why they won 3-2 in this tiebreaker. So NAU got first, Oklahoma State got second, BYU got third, and Stanford got fourth. And this is a pretty interesting thing, is that kind of like the Chicago Bulls, NAU has won its 6th title, and they did it within the last 6-7 years. That's crazy. So they only missed one title once. So if they would have won that one year that they lost, they would have had 6 straight titles. That's just unbelievable. Charlie Hicks and Nico Young are only sophomores, and I'm so excited to see them face off some more because they got at least another 2 years to just keep on battling. So I want to see these guys again next year when I watch this race. All right, enough about cross country. Let's transition to college football, and I want to talk about the Big Ten West because it was an interesting week last weekend before the game started, because there was a three-way or four-way tie for first place in the standings for the West Division. Before the games went live last Saturday, nobody had controlled their destinies. Any one of the teams, which included Purdue, Iowa, Illinois, could win all of the remaining games, but were not secured the spot. They would all have to depend on one or multiple teams to lose, even if they won out. Looking back at it now, right now, today's Tuesday, and Iowa now is the best chance. They beat Minnesota at Minnesota, and they now have control of their destiny. All they have to do is beat Nebraska this weekend, and the division is theirs, and they will proceed to the Big Ten championship game. If they lose, though, Purdue would have the next best chance. The only reason Iowa has the edge over Purdue, even though they have the same conference record, is because on their matchup, Iowa versus Purdue, Iowa beat that team. So if I'm Purdue, I'm really hoping to be a Nebraska fan, honestly. And I just don't see Iowa losing Nebraska. To me, as being from the state of Iowa and being surrounded by Iowa Hawkeye fans, this is almost like their Super Bowl. This is like their favorite game. This is the little brother of the division that they just love to beat the shit out of. Like they hate Nebraska, or they at least don't have any respect for the University of Nebraska. So, and most times they beat them. And I just don't see them losing to Nebraska at home, being in Kinnick Stadium, especially when Nebraska is not very good this year. So I'm just going to say good luck, Iowa, and hope you don't get your ass kicked in the championship game against Ohio State or Michigan. We'll talk a little bit more about those two teams, and we go over the college football playoff rankings that were released this week. But I do want to talk a little bit about NBA basketball. And one story that kind of broke out last Friday was Giannis practicing free throws on Friday, and he got in this weird little situation with some people in the facility. So here's the story. Giannis had a really shitty game. He was 4 for 15 from the free throw line against Philadelphia on Friday night, and so he wanted to practice his free throws after everything settled down. He did it in the middle of cleanup, though. Normal protocol, the game's over, so the arena staff has to clean things up and put them away and prepare for whatever is going to be used next for the venue. Philadelphia player Montrezl Harrell took the ball away from Giannis, tell him just to go home. You took your L, you don't need to be practicing, we're trying to clean up, leave. But Giannis still continued to practice by just getting 2 more balls, and then this is where kind of got weird was when he came back with the balls, he saw that an arena worker was trying to remove the hoop, so there was a ladder in the way of his free throw practice. Giannis moved it, but then the employee moved it back in place, and then Giannis approached the ladder again, and had a quick heated verbal exchange with them, moved the ladder, and I guess he did it in a way where it just completely fell over and crashed on the floor. And as a result, the worker just walked away and all right, I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this. So I guess the question is, who's in the wrong here? It's hard to say. I feel for both sides. I can understand Giannis has a high expectation for himself, and I'm sure the league does because he is a 2-time MVP and he won an NBA final not even 2 years ago. So he probably holds himself to a high degree, and when he's shooting real shitty, he wants to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so that's what fueled him to practice right after the game, because that's what superstars do. They continue to work on their game when they feel they can. However, it's more of the timing of when he should have done it. I think he should have just waited until there was another opportunity. I'm not sure when his next game was going to be, but I feel like it's just not necessary to do it when people are trying to do their job to do something else. This isn't the first time that's happened. He should know that people have to clean up the arena when they're done. And this may have been resolved differently if maybe he talked to the staff worker before moving the ladder. I'm not sure if he did the first time he moved the ladder. I know he did the second time, and that resulted in something a little bit more heated, and then escalated to him accidentally pushing the ladder down, and then this whole media thing happened. Maybe the first time he should have went about it a little differently and just say hey, I just want to get some free throws in. Can I please practice for X amount of minutes? I'll be out of the way quickly. If he did that, maybe the whole story would have been different. But it didn't happen. And quite honestly, I think this will blow up pretty soon. But maybe his approach should be a little different if he needs to do this again. And speaking of superstars, I do want to talk about one that I think is emerging and is Lauri Markkanen. So those of you who know me, you would know I'm actually a big Lauri fan. I started following him his rookie year when he was with the Bulls, and I saw him play, and I was like, this guy's awesome. I love it. He's super tall, and he can shoot threes. That's awesome. I don't see that every day. The last person I can recall being that kind of caliber player was Dirk Nowitzki. And so I followed him throughout the years when he was in Chicago and he was in Cleveland, and now he's with the Jazz this season, and he's just been playing lights out. He's having a career high. He's career high in points at 22.4 points. He's at a career high for blocks per game, which is 0.9. Field goal attempts is 15.5, and 2-point attempts, he's at a career high with 9.8. That's the stat that really interests me the most, is because He's a big guy, and I don't think Chicago used him the right way. In Utah, it looks like they're using his size more to drive to the rim, and his game has just improved overall in general. His handles are better, and the player rotation just makes more sense. Because in Chicago, I just don't think they used him the right way. He was more like a spot-up shooter, which I get it. He's pretty good from the three, and use that to your advantage. But there's other assets that he had, which was his size and his length. And because there was too many scores on the Chicago lineup, along with true centers, Laurie just couldn't fit into the system, especially when Vucevic came into the picture. And shortly after, he got traded to Cleveland, and then the rest is history. So I'm just going to say maybe it just wasn't meant to be in Chicago. And this is his place he needs to be. So I'm rooting for Laurie. I hope he continues to do good things in Utah and wherever he goes. Because I think he seems like a great guy. And I think he's going to do some good things. So the camera died, but we'll still keep rolling through just because I don't have too much time. I want to make sure Ethan still gets some good TV time because I'm in the basement right now. He likes to watch his games on TV. And right now he's putting the kids to sleep. So I'm going to hurry up so we can get going. So let's go over the college football playoff rankings that got released. Yeah, I still got a lingering cough from my COVID case, so hopefully that goes away soon. So I'll start with the list, and you should be able to see the list along with me. So at number 25, we have Louisville, which they are 7-4 record, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't realize Louisville was getting pretty hot. Followed by them is Cincinnati at 24. Texas Longhorns, sorry, but horns down. I think this is kind of more favoritism because the media loves to cover Texas. So I think this kind of played a role in terms of them making into the picture. UCF at 22. Oregon State at 21. Ole Miss at 20. Tulane at 19. UCLA at 18. I'm glad they're still in there. I know they didn't have the best last half of the season, but that's okay. I mean, Pac-12 has been a little bit more competitive with Utah kind of reemerging along with Oregon, and then USC, of course, in which we'll get into that pretty soon. So I'm glad UCLA is still in the rankings, though. North Carolina at 17. North Carolina is very interesting because their quarterback, Drake May, is leading the country, or at least is in second in touchdowns, and he's looking pretty good. But the argument is that they're not playing really great teams, and we'll see how that goes because North Carolina is going to play Clemson in the ACC championship game. So I think that'd be his real true test to see how great of a quarterback he is. Number 16 is Florida State. 15, Notre Dame with an 8-3 record. A couple weeks ago, Notre Dame beat Clemson, which was a really good game to watch. So good for them that they made it into the rankings and they're still in there. Number 14 is Utah. 13 is Washington. They had a very good last half. Kansas State at 12. Penn State at 11. Penn State is a 9-2 record, and their only losses are against teams that are in the top 4 of the college playoff rankings. So it makes sense that they're at least 11th because those are really hard losses. And what can you do about those? Tennessee got blown out by South Carolina State. Was it South Carolina State? Let me double check. Yeah. No, it's South Carolina. They got blown up by South Carolina. Spencer Rattler, who used to be the Oklahoma quarterback, had 6 TDs. Personally, I don't like him, but I'm glad he's getting some good numbers in at his new place. But yeah, Tennessee got blown out, and it definitely didn't help that Hooker got injured in the middle of the game, and he's out for the rest of the year. So I feel bad for Tennessee because they were looking really good going halfway through the season and had a good chance for the playoffs. But yeah, what can you do? Number 9 is Oregon, 9-2. Oregon's probably going to play in the Pac-12 championship game. So I think this is fine. They lost to Georgia, and I think they lost to Utah, but I could be wrong. Let me double check on that. Let's see. Yeah. Oh no, they didn't lose to Oregon. They didn't lose to Utah. They lost to Washington. Yeah, so they beat Utah the following week. So that's probably what kept them in that top 10 ranking. Yeah, because losing to Georgia definitely helps them stay within the top 10. Be a different story if it was like a lower level team. Clemson is 10-1. I'm just not sold on Clemson. I don't think DJ Ugalele is really that great. I can make the argument that he's slightly better than Kelly Bryant. For those of you remember him, props. But my point is, like, he's not as good as Deshaun Watson was in college. He's definitely not as good as Trevor Lawrence was in college. So I think that really limits to how great Clemson can really be. Number 7 is Alabama. They blew out some random ass team on Saturday. So I'm surprised they're still in the top 10, but because it's Alabama and they had some good wins and some very hard losses, that this is going to happen. Alabama is definitely out of the picture in terms of any chance of getting into the Final Four spots for the playoffs, because they're not going to be in the SEC championship game at all. So this is kind of their peak in terms of what their rankings are going to be. All right, number 6 is USC. So USC, let's see, Pac-12 championship game. Yeah, USC is a very interesting position right now. They have a chance of winning the Pac-12, and that may be their ticket into going into the playoffs, depending on the losses that we're going to be seeing within the Final Four. Because one of these teams in the Final Four are going to lose, and 5 and 6 have a chance to sneak in there, depending on which losses there are. Worst case scenario for USC, they go to the Rose Bowl, which I think is the cooler bowl in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. I'm very surprised that Lincoln Riley turned this program around within 1 year. I don't recall a coach having this much success within their first year, besides the next team that we're going to talk about, which is LSU with Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's first year at LSU, and they have a chance of making the playoffs. So that's 5 and 6. LSU and USC both are first year head coaches at their programs, and they both have a chance of getting into the playoffs, which is pretty impressive. With LSU, they're going to be playing Georgia in the SEC Conference Championship. And yeah, that'll be interesting. It sounds like Georgia is going to be the safest bet. If they win or lose, they're probably still going to make it into the playoffs. That's if that's their only loss. But LSU definitely has a chance. Like, I can see Georgia being 4 and LSU being 3 if LSU were to beat Georgia. TCU, if they go undefeated, they got one more game. I think it's against Iowa State, and then they go to the Big 12 championship game. That's going to be interesting, because something tells me there's a chance that TCU might not make it in even with an undefeated record, just because their strength of schedule is just not as dominant or as hard as these other teams that are in the contention or in the top Final Four. So we'll see. I think, in fairness, if TCU wins out, they should get an automatic bid into the playoffs. Especially since, like I said, like two of these teams that are about to mention, one was going to have a loss, and it's going to have to determine where we're going to place them next. So number 3 is Michigan, who are 11-0. Number 2 is Ohio State, who's 11-0, and they're playing this weekend. It's going to be crazy. I'm not sure what to expect out of it. Both their schedules, their best win is against Penn State, but everything else has been kind of cupcakes. And so we'll see. Their first, I guess their second challenge of the season is against themselves. If Michigan loses and TCU remains undefeated, then LSU will definitely get in. LSU also has to win the SEC championship game too. So that's going to be, that's LSU's in is Michigan losing, in my opinion. LSU's in is also TCU losing as well. If Ohio State loses, I can see a scenario if the remaining teams continue to win, that they just be the 4 seed, and then it's just swapped around on what the Final Four is going to be. I just think Ohio State is the second safest team, right behind Georgia, which is number 1. Yeah, Georgia is going to finish 1 or 4. That's the worst case scenario that's going to happen for this team. They beat all the best teams, and they don't look like they're slowing in. They're not slowing down at all, especially on the defensive side of things. Okay, I had to take a quick break to kind of gather my thoughts on this, and also talk to Ethan a little bit. So here are 2 scenarios that I think is going to happen. I think TCU is going to lose. Their games have just been too close, and they have the lowest strength of schedule, so that gives me fear that they're going to lose probably in their Big 12 championship game. And so both scenarios, TCU is going to lose, in my opinion. In scenario A, Georgia wins out and Ohio State wins. In scenario B, Georgia loses to LSU, Ohio State still wins. So here are my final 2 predictions. Scenario A, the final standings will be Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and Michigan. I just don't see LSU being a 3-loss team having the edge over a 1-loss Michigan. That makes more sense to me. So scenario number 2, where LSU beats Georgia, it's going to be this: Ohio State, USC, LSU, followed by Georgia. Those are the 2 most likely scenarios that are going to happen. But let's have a little fun with it, though. Let's say Georgia wins out, Ohio State loses to Michigan. Then the rankings would be pretty much the same as scenario A, but it's just flipped. It'd just be Georgia to Michigan to USC and then Ohio State. And to follow with a scenario 4, where LSU still beats Georgia in this timeline, then it would be Michigan, USC, LSU, Georgia. That's it. Those are the 4 scenarios that could happen. If I were to choose one that's most probable, I'm going to go with the first one, and it's going to be Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and Michigan. All right, now I can close this show with more of a peace of mind. So once again, thanks everyone for listening, and hope you have a great day. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Every little bit helps. I will see you guys in the next episode.